Is there a system? Is there something that can help boundaries stick? Yes. Let's talk about the Calm Parenting system that makes boundaries stick. I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, and education, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about what you can do to help the boundaries stick. In this video, we're going to break down the problem of why boundaries don't stick in some families, and then we're going to talk about the formula and the framework that you can put in place to help boundaries stick at your house. I have parents say things to me sometimes that just show they're having boundary problems. Things like, they never listen to me even when I explain 100 times, right? So they're talking about, they never shut the toilet lid, they never take over their dishes, they won't stop teasing their sister or their brother, they don't put things away, they don't stop talking back. There's just so many things that our children do when they're pushing boundaries. So all of those examples are examples of pushing boundaries. Why do they happen? Let's break this down. So one of the main reasons that children push boundaries is because there's no follow through from the parents. The parents say, don't leave your toys out in the yard. That's a boundary. Any no answer you give to a child is a boundary. No answer on leaving toys out in the yard. And then the toys get left out in the yard and the parent doesn't do anything about it. The parent doesn't talk about it. They don't correct it. They just wring their hands and go, my yard is a mess. I told them not to leave their toys in the yard. We have to do something about it. If we don't have any follow through when we give a boundary, we shouldn't be surprised when the boundary isn't observed. Now, why is it that the follow through doesn't happen? It could be partly on the parent, but could also be because the child actually is being lazy. So is there parent laziness going on? The parent doesn't want to take the time to do the corrections. They don't want those negative interactions to happen, which, by the way, they don't need to be negative. If you subscribe to this channel by now, you know that you can correct your children and have a positive interaction instead of a negative interaction. So I hope you get those types of tips and put those in your toolkit. But if not, maybe you're worried about that. Well, you don't need to be. And sometimes parents get lazy when they worry about stuff like that. Our children get lazy too, which is why they don't ultimately follow through with the boundaries oftentimes. Another reason why this problem of boundaries not being effective and people not following through with their boundaries actually happens is because sometimes the tone of the parent is really inconsistent, meaning the parent doesn't speak with confidence, the parent doesn't speak with calmness, the parent maybe is getting frustrated, aggressive. Maybe the parent's even like asking, would you please clean your room, or something like that. And the child doesn't take the parent seriously when their tone is not good and consistent. Sometimes if the parent's tone is aggressive, then a child might even choose to feel oppositional because they don't want to be talked to like that, because they feel disrespected. So the way that you present those boundaries to the child, are you trying to instill fear? Are you being passive? What is it that you're doing as you're expressing those things? Hopefully you can speak in a way that's just very clear and calm, and you can do that pre-teaching ahead of time so everyone knows what's expected. This brings me to the third reason that the problem with the boundaries can exist, and that is because there's not clear teaching ahead of time of what the boundaries should be and why. This means that the child doesn't have a clear vision of where they're headed going forward. That's important for them in order to remember in the minute what needs to be fixed. If you don't want to have to nag and hound your children all the time, you need to pre-teach them about the skills they need and when they need to use those skills, and then you need to consistently follow through. If your child doesn't have that sense of vision, then they won't care, or they won't understand why they need to make the change, and chances are they won't make the change and observe the boundary you need them to. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about boundaries and then how you can help those boundaries stick in your home. Boundaries stick when they adhere to the following formula. When there is calmness, so you have to have a tone of calmness when you're teaching about the boundaries, expressing those boundaries. You pre-teach ahead of time what the boundaries are. Then you give feedback on the boundaries. So the feedback step can be your correction if the boundary wasn't followed. It could also be the praise, like, oh wow, you observed the boundary. Look at what you did. Look at what the positive was because you did observe that boundary. And then the fourth part of the formula is consistency. You have to consistently follow through with the boundary. So what might this look like? Here's an example. Let's say that I have a boundary of no talking back to mom and dad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check myself for calmness, make sure we're at a good calm time. I am going to do pre-teaching. I'm going to explain to my child that we communicate in a certain way if we have an opposing viewpoint with someone in the family. We use one of our 4 basic skills. So I teach 4 basic skills in my TSG parenting course, and one of those 4 basic skills is a skill called disagreeing appropriately. When a person uses the disagree appropriately skill, they seek to understand, then to be understood, they maintain calmness, they learn how to communicate effectively with other people who may not agree with them initially. And hopefully they can come to a place of consensus, but it doesn't always happen, which means that sometimes they have to say okay and drop the subject, even if they chose to use their disagree appropriately skill. We teach them those skills ahead of time in a tone of calmness. Then, as they go throughout their day, they are corrected when they don't use the skill. So let's say that it's the back talking problem. I say the skill you need to use is disagreeing appropriately. If you choose not to use that skill, then I will do a correction and you will get the opportunity to earn an extra chore, because we use extra chores when they don't use one of their skills, because they get the opportunity to accept it, which is another one of their skills. If they don't learn how to accept a consequence, they can't learn self-government. So we give them that opportunity. Then I say, but if you choose to observe this boundary of not talking back and you choose to use your skill of disagreeing appropriately instead of talking back, then this will be the positive. I'll take the time to listen to you. You might get your way. It won't go straight to a correction. There's going to be a lot of good things that could come out of this, right? So then I say, all right, so now going forward, I'm going to correct you, or I'm going to praise you and show you when it went good and when it didn't. And then I have to keep myself to it. So that's the last step. That consistency part of the formula is super important as we're trying to help our children learn cause and effect, because you can't learn self-government unless you get the opportunity to learn cause and effect. There's a lot of parents who naively think in this day and age that a good strategy or a good system of parenting for boundaries is to allow the child to set all the boundaries. That is not good. That's actually going to create a detrimental effect in the home. Everybody will have their own boundaries and then everybody ends up offended. There do need to be boundaries that are established in the home by the parents using the 4 basic skills of self-government, which are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately can help, especially that one that's accepting no answers, because almost every boundary includes a no, a line that we won't cross over. That's why we call it a boundary. So let's talk about a teachable framework, something that you can use in the moment to help the boundary stick. We're getting into corrections now. You need to be willing to correct your children, to give them that negative feedback if needed. And when I say negative feedback, I don't mean be negative with your children. So please keep that in mind. You should feel closer to your children during and after a correction than you even did before. It's absolutely possible. So what do you do then? Let's say that you do the pre-teaching. Okay, that was part of our formula. The child now doesn't observe the boundary. Maybe the pre-teaching was it's a no answer to leave your backpack on the kitchen table when you come home from school. They come home, it's a habit, they leave the backpack on the table. Now what do? Now you need to follow through with your correction, and you need to consistently do that, right? So the framework for correction, there's a 7-step process for correction that you go through, which starts with a very calm description of what happened and why that might not be a good idea, and emphasis on staying calm. Then you explain what they should have done. They should have dropped the subject. Now, how does that term mean anything to this backpack situation? Well, in our 4 basic skills, the skill accepting no answers has for its last step, drop the subject. So whenever you give someone a boundary, that's a no answer, they are supposed to look at that situation, keep a calm face, voice, and body, say okay, or disagree appropriately, and then they need to drop the subject. So that if they continue to do that thing, that means they're not dropping the subject. So you would correct them for not dropping the subject. You would tell them what they should have done. You would practice things the right way, giving them the opportunity to get more praise for doing things the right way, because we need to have more opportunity doing things the right way than the wrong way. And then they get the opportunity to earn that extra chore because they didn't remember to drop the subject. They check back, they get praised, they move on with their life, everything is fine. You don't have to get emotionally invested because you took things personally. They don't have to take things personally. You just go through a framework that's already established, which is the corrective teaching framework that's part of the teaching self-government system of parenting. The teaching self-government system has many more skills to offer you besides what I just talked about now, and I hope you will find those things. One thing that starts it all is the calmness. Remember, your calmness, your ability to stay connected to your children during and after and before a correction. But if you're not calm, it all falls apart. So how do you get to calmness? I have a Calm Parenting Toolkit that I'd like to give you for free right now. In fact, if you go to my website, which is teachingselfgovernment.com, then you can find that Calm Parenting Toolkit. There's actually a link in the description below this video. You can just click that link and find yourself at the Calm Parenting Toolkit for free today. Click on the link. I'll see you there.